Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. And today we are putting on our musical theater caps. I'm so excited about this. We're talking about Schmigadoon on Apple TV. And I am film and theater critic Rachel Wagner. And here I have two friends who are going to help us talk about the first season. And then we'll be doing our weekly recaps of the second season. We have Maren Scriven Swenson here.
Hello.
And we have Adam Cannon here.
Hello.
Hi. And so what we like to do is, since this is your first time coming on the podcast, I like to give you a chance to both of you to introduce yourself, and let's talk a little bit about kind of our love of theater and how that got started. And so Maren, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Okay. Hi, I'm Maren Scriven Swenson, as she said, and I am a part of the Utah Theater Bloggers. I'm actually the vice president and also a member of the American Theater Critics Association. I'm on their executive board. I have loved theater ever since. I like to say my sister dragged me into it when she was in high school. They needed kids. They were doing MAME at Layton High School in Davis County, Utah. And they needed some kids in the cast, and she was a senior. And so she just dragged me along, and I became obsessed ever since that. And it runs in the family. She actually teaches at Clearfield High School in Davis County right now. And so she's a theater teacher. I did music and choir and piano and theater all throughout high school and college. I minored in theater for my undergraduate. Then I went on and did a bunch of other stuff. I have this whole other career as a therapist, but just also found myself still gravitating back to theater and became involved with Utah Theater Bloggers over a decade ago.
Wow.
And yeah, so just very, very heavily involved and in love with especially musical theater. When I graduated from Utah State, I actually moved to New York City just to work for nonprofits and go to shows every night. So, yeah.
Do you remember the first musical theater you ever went to? Do you have a memory of that?
Yes. When my sister was in her first year of high school, they did 42nd Street. I'm sure I probably did stuff before that. I'm sure my family dragged me to stuff, but I actually have a very vivid memory of the curtain rising and seeing the tap dance, Just the Shoes. And I was young, I was probably like second grade, third grade. And I just remember the tap dancing when the curtain rised. I have a visceral memory of that.
Wow, that's so cool. What about you, Adam? Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little about your experience with musical theater?
Yeah, so I'm Adam Cannon. I don't have any credentials as a reviewer other than as an audience member and a somewhat critical eye caused by my many years of directing musical theater and stage managing. And
Oh, that's so cool.
so I sort of know what I like, and I know what bothers me when I go see it. Maybe that makes me a better director. I don't know. I've loved directing, but I've kind of directed all up and down the Wasatch Front here in Utah. But my love of musical theater came, ironically, kind of in high school too. I was a freshman in high school, and where they were doing, I was in the choir. I loved to sing. I'd never really thought about musical theater. We weren't a family that went to a lot of theater things, and I was the oldest of 10 kids, and I was in the choir, and every year the school did one big production. That was the musical. And theater in my school was very looked down upon. There were the drama geeks, and it was not the cool place to be. It was sort of relegated to the basement, literally. The green room, or the little theater and the green room were down there. And the only time the theater got on the big stage was for this big musical. And I didn't know it, but every year they asked the choir to basically just be part of the ensemble. So basically they just said, you come and you sing. We're not going to make you dance. We're not going to make you, do a lot of movement or things like that. You just come and be part of the ensemble. And so we were like, great, this is extra credit for choir or whatever. And so my friend and I did it, and they needed someone to do I didn't know it was called this at the time, but they needed someone to do a French cross. The cross just between scene changes where the curtain closes and someone comes out front and sort of distracts the audience while the scene change is going on behind. And we were doing the pajama game. And so
Oh.
it was right after there's a big scene at the park where everybody's sort of celebrating and having fun and whatever. And then my friend and I volunteered or were voluntold. I don't remember how it all went down, but we were asked to do a French cross where we basically just were two drunk employees of this factory coming home from the company party. And so we were just sort of walking across stage, hiccuping and swaying. And, we were freshmen in Utah. What did we know about how to play a drunk person? But,
Yeah.
And then next year I got involved again with the choir. And that year, we were doing Carnival, which is the story sometimes called Lily, because I think the movie was called Lily, but it was
I love that movie.
a puppeteer and, falls in love with a girl. And he has several puppets that he sort of speaks through. And so the guy who was playing Horrible Harry, which is the walrus puppet, had to drop out. And the director said, "Does anyone want to give this a shot?" And I said, "I'll go for it." I didn't know anything about it. And so he gave me a script. And I, ended up doing. So my 3 high school productions was I was a drunk, I was the voice of a walrus, and then my senior year, I was King Sextimus in Once Upon a Mattress, which was, a mean thing. So I had about, I had all those lines from the pit, but I had about like 2 total lines on stage where I was actually saying something, because it's only at the end of Once Upon a Mattress does he get those.
Yeah. That's so great. I love that. Yeah, I went to high school actually in Maryland, Middletown, Maryland, and I was in 5 productions, almost 6, but then I ended up having appendicitis and withdrawing from Little Abner. I was going to be one of the scientists in Little Abner, but I didn't end up getting to do it. But yeah, I grew up loving theater, musical theater. When I was probably 10 or 11, my grandma gave me a cassette tape with the best of Andrew Lloyd Webber. And so I love that so much. And then she took me, the first show that I really remember was seeing Phantom of the Opera in San Francisco and just being blown away, by the spectacle of it all. I actually I saw it last year, and it really, I mean, as far as spectacle, it still is one of the biggest shows I think I've ever seen. And especially that chandelier at the beginning. And so I also remember going to the Shakespeare Festival, because when I was younger, we lived here. And my dad took me to the Shakespeare Festival twice, 2 years in a row. And I remember that we saw The Tempest, we saw Blythe Spirit, we saw Twelfth Night, which I thought was hilarious. And so I had those early experiences. I also remember going to see West Side Story because one of my teachers was in it. When I was like 4th, 5th grade, something like that. So I have those kind of early experiences, and then in high school doing the musicals, we did The Wiz, which is like the widest version of The Wiz.
Oh no!
Yeah, not great, but there you go. We did The Wiz. We did a Christmas pageant kind of thing where we did the retelling of Silent Night, and how it was written for the guitar because the organ was broken. And my role was to be this old lady who runs in and tells the pastor, "Herr Pastor, the organ is broken." And so that was memorable. And then I was in Bye Bye Birdie, and I got to play both a teenager and an adult. Because I'm a terrible dancer. I am really bad because I'm kind of dyslexic, and so that hurts me a lot with getting, because I think I'm like a decent singer, but I'm just a really, really, really bad dancer. So that hurts me in getting any kind of roles or anything. But Um, but those were very fun, and I was obsessed with Les Miserables in high school. It was my. I mean, I went to see it. That was the first show on Broadway that I ever saw, and I was so excited. They had the 10th anniversary concert at that time that I had watched so many times, and I knew every line to every song. I if they needed a quick swing, I could have gone in for any role uh,
No, I
as a
think that you and
teenager.
I have a very similar story because I was the same way. That's the very first show I saw on Broadway too, and
Yeah.
I could have jumped into.
Yeah, we got the choice because it was a school trip. We could either see Cats or see Les Mis, and I chose Les Mis.
Yep.
But yeah, and so I've always really enjoyed going to theater. But then when the pandemic came, it was like a traumatic thing for me. The fact that the theaters closed for so long, and I just made a promise, that I was going to support theater as much as I possibly could coming out of it. And so I just pretty much every single week I would go to see at least one local show, if not two, or more. And then I also did three New York trips over the course of the 2 years, um, and it was it's been an amazing journey, amazing experience. And then I found out about Utah theater bloggers because I was already a film critic, and so I was like, maybe I could be a theater critic too. And that's been an incredible experience. And then I got into the American Theater Critics Association, and so yeah, I'm really thrilled to be actually like maybe semi-professional at doing this. That's exciting to me. It's something I definitely didn't see happening, but I just love local theater so much, and it wasn't going to go down on my watch, that's for sure.
Are you a fan of Rachel's Reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/hallmarkies.
My journey. But let's talk about Schmigadoon. So this came out in 2021, first season. And it's kind of fun because the creators, Cinco Paul and Ken Jario, they have Utah heritage.
Which I didn't know until you sent some notes. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
really?
awesome. Yeah, I didn't know that. Oops.
Yeah. Did you know that, Adam?
I had no clue.
Yeah, that's so
Oh,
funny.
good. I'm glad I wasn't the only one who did that. Yay.
Yes. So they had, I guess, both done work for the LDS Church,
Okay.
and that's how they met. Which it is kind of funny because I mean this is definitely not.
Not LDS church work.
Yeah, not LDS
But this production. Hilarious.
But they said that even though Schmigadoon's musical style, characters, and satire are largely based on 1940s and 50s musicals, the sets, the costumes reflect 1910s America, like the setting in The Music Man. And so the setup is basically like Brigadoon, that this couple gets stuck in this magical town, Schmigadoon, and there's something about it that feels very like Utah, aside from the language, but like the spectacle of it to me feels like, okay, this feels like a road show practically.
It's funny that you say that because I don't know. A few years ago, Pasek and Paul, who wrote Dear Evan Hansen and Greatest Showman and everything, they did a talk back type thing at UVU.
I was there for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And do you remember when they were talking about how they had a showing of The Greatest Showman here in Salt
Yeah.
Lake? And they were saying that it got like rave reviews. Everyone was just loving it, but they didn't know where the showing was when they got this feedback back. And they kept saying, really?
Yes.
It's gotten such great reviews. And so finally they said, wait, where was this showing? And they said, oh, in Salt Lake City. And then Pasek and Paul said, oh, wait, well, Utah's just different. You can't trust that, because Utah and musicals, it's just different. And I never laughed so hard at anything, because it really is. And having been so involved in the theater community and being a theater critic here for so long, it really is. And going back and going to like National Critic Association conferences and things, and people will say, well, what kind of theater scene do you have in Utah? And I'm like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Well,
So yes, I feel like this does have a Utah feel. I'm sorry I cut you off, Adam.
And of course, I mean, the interesting thing about that is that Keala Settle has Utah ties as well. So
yes, she went to
you know,
SU. My sister studied down there
so
too.
they're all surprised about it, Utah theater or whatever. And it's like you're using a product of Utah theater, at least partially.
Right, exactly. It's like
I think that the people Utah citizens who haven't lived other places don't understand how unique this is. I mean, I've lived in Sacramento area and I've lived in Maryland, and neither of those places had close to the kind of local theaters that you have here.
Right.
I mean, especially since I started this, I guess, goal. It just seems like I'm still after 2 years of doing it, I'm still being introduced to new theaters that I'd never heard of before. Mm-hmm. It's really incredible. And it's really funny that you bring up that story, because I was actually also at that screening, the film screening. I would never go to one now because I'm a professional film critic, but at the time I wasn't, and so they called down. They had us fill out forms, and I was like trying to give actual like feedback, because that's why we're here. So I'm filling it out, and the opera singer, Rebecca Ferguson,
right.
I was like, she's not good enough. Like, this is supposed to be the most amazing, like world renowned, right? And so I put that on my thing, and then we're going down, and there was probably like 15 of us in the circle all giving our advice, and everybody else was just like, it was amazing, it was so good. And I said, I really enjoyed it, but the opera singer wasn't good enough. And there was an audible gasp. I said, I'm sorry, she wasn't good enough. And anyway, so I turned in my things, and I like to think that I'm the reason they recast.
And they put Lauren Allred there. Yeah. It's because of you. That's fantastic.
So anyway, but so
Schmigadoon does kind of have a Utah feel, because we can all burst into song at any time.
Yes. Now, it's interesting. I wanted to talk to you, particularly Maren, about this, because so it's a lot of poking fun at the Music Man, which
yes,
I know because I'm friends with you. You're not a fan of the Music Man.
Yes, I do not like the Music Man. Famously, how in the world can I be a big fan of musical theater and hate the Music Man? I know.
What is it that you don't like about the Music Man?
So there's a couple of things. I don't like the story that a person comes into a town and swindles the whole town, and they all love him for it, and then he gets away with it, and that Marion at first is trying to call his number out and whatever else, and then in the end she just says, okay, cool. And I don't like that the town actually ignores Marion and Marion's advice and everything, and then he comes along and says the exact same things, and they're all like, oh, he's a genius. Like, it just is very misogynistic to me. But then I also have, and this one I will admit is just a totally personal thing, like, I don't like in the history of musical theater that it was up against West Side Story for the Tony and it won. Like, to me, it just feels like, really, like, when you look at because for me, musical theater I do like things like I know a lot of people just like to go to shows just to escape and have a good time. And I will admit the music is fantastic in Music Man. It's fun and it's great and it's well written and you can go there and have a good time. And the very first, it's funny because the very first review I ever wrote for Utah Theater Bloggers was for a production of the Music Man, and it was a rave because I will say that the cast, like I'm not reviewing when I review a production of the Music Man now. I'm not reviewing what Meredith Wilson wrote because someone else did that back in the 1960s. I'm reviewing this current production, this current director's choices, and all of that, and they did a fantastic job. So, if for people who like the Music Man, they're going to enjoy that.
Yeah.
I personally don't like the Music Man, so I didn't enjoy it per se, but I enjoyed that production of it. But I prefer shows that tell a story, that speak to something that's bigger societally, and that's probably the therapist, the psychologist in me. And so yeah, when I compare it and like which is the better show, West Side Story or Music Man, I would go for West Side Story. If I was a Tony voter, I would have voted for West Side Story. So it's all of that turned into one why I don't like Music Man. Having said that, with Schmigadoon, the mockery of Music Man, oh, perfect.
Right.
Beautiful. Loved every single moment of that.
Yeah. What do you think, Adam, about Music Man and also Schmigadoon poking fun at Music Man in particular?
All right. Well, I sort of run counter to Maren in that I have always been a huge Music Man fan, but I think I'm not. I don't look at it necessarily through critical eyes. I tend to be more of the, do I enjoy it? Do I feel like the acting is done well? Do I like the music? And being a huge, in a barbershop family and whatever, Music Man is important to me for the preservation of barbershop music.
Oh, and the barbershop is beautiful in Music Man. Beautiful.
Which is why when I go to productions of Music Man, I struggle with when they just say, I'm going to take 4 singers who can sing and put them in 4-part harmony, and I say that's not barbershop music. There's an art. You got to hear those chords ring in barbershop music. But like Maren, I wonder about my credentials where I can say I'm a musical theater person, and I don't like Sondheim. I'm not a fan of Sondheim, but I love Music Man. That's always been a fun one. I've directed it. I did a production of it down in Spanish Fork that I think was fairly well received and people enjoyed and we made sure to have the barbershop singers do great. And I'm a big fan of comedy and especially parody type comedy when done well. And so I love the little twists on Music Man that we see. My kids and I sat and watched Schmigadoon a number of times, and we may not be as versed on all the different shows that appear. We were trying to name the ones that we could name. We knew it was Brigadoon because we could tell by the title, but I've not been to. I can't talk about my first Broadway production because I've never been to one, but it's I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the parody and the making fun of the Music Man, and I thought it was comedy done really well, and the lyrics that were written were very clever. I always struggle sometimes with lyrics that are either the rhymes feel forced or the meter feels forced. I gotta add 3 beats here, but I gotta get them in really quickly, so I'm going to do a triplet or something, and it just feels like you're jamming a square peg into a round hole.
Well, where I would say I land on the Music Man, I do love it. Where I would say I would land on it is, to me, it's kind of similar to, say, Christmas Carol, about that there's no lost causes, that there's hope for anybody to be redeemed and to come around and to find the good in them. And so that's where, he is a bad dude, but he comes around in the end and there's redemption. So that's where I think I love that idea of no lost causes. I think that's really moving. Until There Was You, kind of is the ultimate moment, where they kind of realize that. But yeah, I really enjoyed Schmigadoon. I thought it was really funny, and it was just such a lift because I think things were just starting to kind of open up, that summer. And so I think a lot of us kind of needed that jolt of musical theater.
Absolutely. It really
Yeah.
lifted my spirits to be able to watch
Yeah.
the episodes.
And I have to say also about Sondheim, I have to say I admire Sondheim more than I love his shows. I respect them. They're very difficult. I understand it. I get it, but I don't know. I like shows more that are a little bit more like belty and like have these memorable sort of ballads. That's sort of more my style. And most of the Sondheim shows are kind of sing talky and don't have that like memorable ballad. But like Into the Woods has agony and No One Is Alone. It has a few, but it's more the strong character moments, I guess. Anyway, I
That's
understand what you're
where
saying, Adam.
I fall onto some of the. I do love Sondheim. Sweeney Todd to me
Yeah.
is golden, and I do Into the Woods is one of my top 10. And then
Mm-hmm.
I got to see Assassins with Neil Patrick Harris, and then I
Mm.
did see it again. I actually saw it the day Sondheim died off Broadway,
Oh,
and
wow.
I find it a fascinating show. Assassins to me is just so fascinating. So
Yeah,
I
I
do
just
love
got to see
Sondheim.
it at Salt Lake Community College last year.
Yeah, I do love Sondheim, but I also agree that it's not your ballady, your music. It's not your Wicked, which is also a favorite show of mine. It's a very different type of musical genre. So I can understand and totally agree with the idea that Sondheim's not for everyone. It's not the type of musical theater that a lot of people go to, and it is as far away from Music Man as you possibly can get.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's gonna be fun to cover season 2 because we're gonna get more of that. Well, the first episode, we'll just go real quick through these episodes. So the first episode, there's 6 episodes. The first episode is called Schmigadoon, and we have Melissa, Josh, and Melissa is the fan of musicals, and he's the cynical one, which I think is a fun dynamic. And Adam, did you think that these two, Melissa and Josh, had like a nice chemistry?
It was definitely an interesting chemistry. I loved how they kind of kept doing the back and forth between sort of how their history came to be. Their regular life as doctors, and showing scenes from their life before they landed in Schmigadoon to sort of build up that chemistry and that history. And I thought those parts were great. And then you know it, so I thought it was an interesting chemistry, and I thought it worked well. It wasn't sort of the smarmy Hallmark romance that you see, which I liked, because as much as I am a fan of sort of getting lost in a Hallmark movie now and then, it didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel sugary sweet over the top. It felt natural and somewhat complicated, somewhat difficult, which I think is what good sort of more realistic type relationships are like.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they had enough conflict to make it believable that they don't instantly find true love. So you have to go through the whole series before they can cross the bridge, and we see in the next episode. But enough connection that you could you know you could feel it. So I think that was good. Maren, did you have any of, so we've got this amazing cast of Broadway greats. Did you have one of them in particular that you're like, you would say maybe you're a super fan of, or do you just
Yeah.
love them all?
Yeah, no, I do love them all.
Yeah.
Absolutely love them all. And so like when I saw you put that note in, it would be really hard to pick, except for I actually have kind of this silly little connection that will always be my favorite to Kristen Chenoweth, because I met her in a grocery store in New York when I lived there. Like just this random happenstance. There's a little grocery store around the corner from the theater where Wicked plays. And I lived in New York when Wicked opened.
Mm-hmm.
And I had actually gone to see Wicked, and the playbill was still in my purse. even though I had seen it a few days before. And I was there in Midtown because of a work thing, and I just turned the corner and there she was. And I was terrified to even say anything to her, but I had to because it was Kristen Chenoweth. And let me tell you, she's like the nicest person in the entire universe. And so she and I talked for a minute, and I said, this is going to seem so weird and stalkery, but I actually have the playbill in my purse. And she laughed and she said, oh, I'll sign it. And so she signed it for me. And then she was like, come here, come here. And she's like, come follow me. And I was like, what in the world? And so she let me follow her. And then she was meeting this little girl who, what it was like this, like, I don't know if it was like officially Make-A-Wish, but it was this special thing where she was meeting this little girl who had wanted to meet her, and she had like some health problems and whatever else. And so there was this special meet Kristen Chenoweth outside of Wicked's theater, and I got to watch the whole thing. And so like,
Oh, wow.
it was like one of the greatest experiences with theater ever. And it just happened because I was buying something at a grocery store by the Gershwin Theater. And so, Kristen Chenoweth
cool.
from then on has been like one of my favorites. I'm sure she'll never, ever remember this. She has no idea who I am, but I know who she is, and I have her signature on my wall, and I met her at a grocery store, and it's like the greatest thing. So yes, Kristen Chenoweth.
I've never even, the only one of these actors that I have actually seen perform is Ariana Bose, actually at D23. She sang a song for the new, the Disney movie that's coming out this year called Wish. She was a surprise, and she sang the song. So that's the only one of these people that I've heard, actually heard sing. But I'm a huge fan. I agree with you. I'm a huge fan of all of them. And I would be super stoked to meet Kristen Chenoweth in a grocery store. So that's good. I'm a huge Aaron Tveit fan. I think he's so handsome. And he did a Hallmark movie, so that was exciting during the pandemic.
I got to see him in Moulin Rouge right before the pandemic started. So yeah. Love.
He's great. So in this episode, the main songs, you have Corn Puddin', You Can't Tame Me, and the Leprechaun Song are the main songs. And I would say that Corn Puddin' is the like standout, one of the standouts of the show. Would you agree?
Yeah, I for sure agree with that. I laughed so hard that my husband actually had to rewind it so that he could hear what the song actually said, because I was interrupting it by laughing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just think they set up the whole like style and everything of the show really well in this first episode. And you know, of course, You Can't Tame Me is all an Aaron Tveit song, so you're not going to be a big fan of that. And the Leprechaun Song, it's not that long, but it's fun for Martin Short. Okay, so then we have Lover's Spat is the second episode. And they get in this fight. And I really felt like this picnic-based auction, that was all very Oklahoma-y to me. You know, because the starts of Oklahoma. And so basically, Josh ends up winning Betsy, who's Dove Cameron. And then Danny wins Melissa. And that's where we get Enjoy the Ride is the big song on this. But so I thought this was a fun way to kind of play up the, like with Oklahoma, people will say we're in love, you know, like this lover spat kind of a thing was fun. And you have Aaron Tveit's character, who is very, very reminiscent of Carousel. And Bill Bigelow from Carousel. But did you have, Adam, did you have a favorite song or anything like that stuck out to you in these episodes?
Well, I mean, from episode 1, Corn Puddin' was by far the toe tapper. Episode 2, I guess I was sort of drawn to the Enjoy the Ride because I had helped work on a rare Utah production of Carousel a number of years ago, and so I could see the connection there, and so that one sort of connected to me. The whole thing with my history with Music Man, Oklahoma, Carousel, all of those, I'm sort of more connected to that older genre of musical than I am to these newer ones coming out. So the whole thing was fabulous, but I loved Enjoy the Ride. There was some really great moments in there. That interplay back and forth was so much fun between Danny and Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my high school musicals was Carousel. So the whole thing was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, they were totally parodying Oklahoma with the baskets and everything. And I saw the new revival of Oklahoma on Broadway a few years ago. So I found it just absolutely perfect.
Did you see it with Ali Stroker?
Yeah, I did.
I love her so much.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay, so then episode 3 is Cross That Bridge. Yeah, this is fun. We have Alan Cumming playing the closeted gay mayor, and this is when they sing he's a queer one, that man of mine. I forgot to write down the actress who sings that song, but she's that one. It's very funny, and obviously that's playing up on all of the innuendo, I guess,
right?
Maybe you'd say,
yeah.
In that era. I mean, especially something like Oklahoma, where there's so much homoerotic moments in that show that it's funny. But
it was Anna Harada. I was trying to remember that too. Yeah, she's from
funny.
Avenue Q is where I saw her. But yeah, she's hilarious.
Yeah, and then we have the Cross That Bridge. Which so once they find true love, if they cross the bridge, then they will be able to leave Schmigadoon, and then we also get the "You Done Tamed Me" from Danny to Melissa, and the Cross That Bridge really has like a spiritual quality to it. It feels it's really fun, and so then we have episode 4. We have Suddenly. And this is where we get to know Ariana DeBose's character more. And she hasn't been honest about the fact that she has this child. And she sings this song, With All Your Heart, to Josh. And then we get this song Suddenly, where the mayor comes out. And then we also have this guy Lopez, played by Jamie Kimmel. And I guess they were saying he's inspired by Captain Von Trapp. I don't really see that much. Do you see that?
I saw it a little bit, but yeah, I was reading that too, and I was like, I don't quite get that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I guess the Jane Krakowski character is Countess Gabrielle von Blurken. That's based on the Baroness in Sound of Music. Kind of. Like, she's the other woman, but she's not really the Baroness that much.
Which that is more played up in the stage version of Sound of Music, not the movie version.
That's true.
So I think they pulled that more from the stage version.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies
or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
To say that I think that Sound of Music is one that the movie is a lot better than the staged, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just how they moved everything around and they got rid of those 2 songs that Max and the Baroness sing.
Right.
I think it's much better. But yeah, I would say that the critiques of Music Man and Oklahoma were better, and Carousel were better than the critiques of Sound of Music.
Yes.
Would you agree, Adam? I do like Jane Krakowski's song when she's driving in the car. That is really funny to me.
I do have one thought about what one of the things they did with Sound of Music, but we haven't gotten to that episode yet. So.
Okay. But yeah, Suddenly I think is a really fun song. That's a very Music Man inspired song.
I loved with All Your Heart, with the one in the schoolroom with all the kids. That to me, sort of, oh
yeah.
It felt a little bit like, some of those old school musical, but then also with the kids and the way they were, reacting, it almost felt like a throwback to Matilda a little bit too, with Revolting Children.
Yes, I agree with you there.
Like almost,
Matilda, so.
Yeah, like a 76 trombones, maybe. I also feel a little bit, or and then I guess the one that's the song that's the most poking fun at Sound of Music is the Vagina song.
Yes,
that's very Do-Re-Mi.
That's the one that I was going to bring up, and I found it probably far more hilarious than I think I should have. But I blame it on the fact that I have a house full of teenagers right now between my children and my stepchildren. And I was just like, that's it. This is what I'm going to play for my children for all sex education.
Yes. Yeah. Well, episode 5 is Tribulation. And this is this Tribulation. This is where Mildred, Kristen Chenoweth's character, she sings, and it's a very clear homage to Trouble from Music Man. Kind of riling everybody up, getting them excited in the town. And that's a great sequence, I think. Really fun. And sometimes it's Kristen Chenoweth takes a lot of roles that aren't musicals, and maybe that's nice for her to get a break. But sometimes I'm like, you're wasting it. You should be singing all the time because you're so good. And she was, I thought, really fun in this role. And I mean, Maren, what did you think of Alan Cumming and the whole he's queer one, that Man of Mine, and that whole, and then Suddenly and everything? Did you think that was funny?
Oh, I thought it was very funny. But the funny thing is I've always been a little bit scared of Alan Cumming. I don't know why, but he scares me a little bit. Like I don't know, like all the roles he's ever played to me are a bit like, and I feel like I have a sneeze coming. I don't think, no, so if I sneeze all of a sudden, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But yeah, like he just, I don't know. So this role was really actually almost healing for me, because I was like, oh, he's very funny, which he is. He's hilarious, but I don't know why I've just felt like he's a scary guy. Like back when he did Cabaret in the 90s, like that was a really like a scary thing. They really leaned into the World War II Holocaust of it all. And I saw that and it was terrifying. And so like that's what I knew him as, was starving and about to die and everything else. And so I was just like, oh, so it was actually really wonderful for me to see just this funny side of him. So I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah. It was really funny. And yeah, then this is when we get I Always Never Get My Man, which was really funny, especially at the beginning when they're like, you're a pretty minor character to get this full song. Yeah. And
that comment was really funny too, because I remember when I directed Singing in the Rain, and there's a whole song called Beautiful Girl that's done by this unnamed tenor.
Yeah, that's true.
That's his only song in the show, but you got to find this beautiful singer because it's this gorgeous song and it can be such a fun number. And I just remember thinking, why did they write this for this person who has no bearing on the show at all? You know,
That's
and
true. That's a good
so when I
point.
heard, and then of course in title of show, there's a lot of great call outs to, secondary characters and things like
Yes.
that. So I love when they sort of break the fourth wall with a comment like that of like,
Yeah.
you're just a minor character. Why do you have your own song?
Where did you direct Singing in the Rain?
Spanish Fork.
Oh, I love that show. I saw it. I saw it at Hale actually 3 times when they did it. And then I mean I've seen it. I saw it at Hale Center Theater Orm years ago, and then I saw it at Heritage Theater in Perry and in Logan. I love that show. I think it's one of because a lot of times these ones where they take a movie musical and make it into a stage musical, they I don't know, they make it worse. So it's not
Yeah.
like I think Seven Brides for Seven Brothers is worse than the movie. I mean, I'm very mixed on most of these Disney musicals. Some are really good, some of them I don't love. But I don't know. I thought that one was
Yeah,
really
Singing in the Rain
fun.
is fantastic, especially if you
Yeah.
get the right cast. I saw
Yeah.
one production. I actually cannot remember where it was, but I did see one production where the person singing "Make 'Em Laugh" did not make me laugh, and I was like, "Are you
Uh,
kidding me? You can't get this song wrong." But other
yeah.
than that, yeah, I adore
Yeah.
that.
I think they did just a great job adapting that one
Yeah.
for the stage. But anyway, so yeah, I thought this was a really funny scene. This whole you're how are you still driving the car? Like, um, and then the last episode is called "How We Change," and it's we finally get to hear Josh actually singing to Melissa.
Yes.
He says, "You make me want to sing," and the whole town uh, gathers together against Mildred, and that they're going to be accepting and supportive of the mayor, and then they sing "This Is How We Change," and then they are able to walk across the bridge. So it's very sweet and very fun, and so
And then it's
yeah.
a cliffhanger.
What do you think of so this new season where they're going to Chicago, and we're going to get sort of the darker era of musicals? What do you think about that, Aaron?
I actually really love that they're following musical theater history. Because they went with, we had our golden age of
Mm-hmm.
our Oklahomas and our Music Man and everything like that. And now we're going into Chicago and the cabaret and the Sweeney Todd and everything of it all, that we're going to have the darkness. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's fantastic. It will be interesting if the storylines and the plots can keep up with it. Like, I'm interested to see how the characters do, and I hope it can still be as funny as the first season was. I mean, time will tell, but I love that, because sometimes, with some shows, if you don't figure out how to keep the plot going and you just do the same funny over and over again, it doesn't stay good. So I love that we're
Mm-hmm.
like moving forward with musical theater history. I just hope the plot stays with that.
Yeah. Well, and I was really happy that they were able to get basically everybody to come back. I didn't know because it felt like this pocket where they had all these Broadway actors who were out of work, and so they would be able to do this show. So I think, are they going to be able to get everybody back? But pretty much everybody's coming back. Kristen Chenoweth, Jamie Kimmel, Alan Cumming,
Ariana
uh,
DeBose.
everybody. Yeah, Ariana DeBose. They're all coming back for season 2. And so yeah, I'm real excited, and it's going to push me to finally check off some shows off my list, like something like Cabaret. I've never seen the movie or the show. It doesn't play that often here in Utah.
know. Just be
But
prepared for darker shows. These are much
yeah,
darker than everything we've been talking about.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I
But
love that in the trailer for it, they sort of bring that up that, Melissa and Josh are apparently looking to rekindle or recapture some of that happiness that they found in Schmigadoon. And there's some comment in the trailer about this doesn't feel like happiness.
yeah,
They, and then I think it's from the Sweeney Todd throwback. One of them says, "You just aren't very familiar. You're not
this
familiar with
era.
this classic, with this style or whatever." And it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. But I thought that was like
Yeah,
what Maren was pointing out, that I hope the storyline continues, and I do like that they're saying not everything is happy, and I'm curious to see how they sort of wrap up, because it sounds like the relationship is still going through a few rocky points after they leave Schmigadoon, and
yeah,
they're seeking to rekindle that. And so they go out in the woods hunting for Schmigadoon, dressed in the style of Schmigadoon, and end up in Chicago instead.
Yeah, to me, it feels
yeah.
very much like the whole idea of Into the Woods, which I love so much, that
Mm-hmm.
the end of the first act is everything is happily ever after. And then the second act, everything falls apart. And so I feel like, okay, we ended season 1 with, okay, we're in love. Everything feels great. And so now we're entering into the dark of season 2, which, again, as a psychologist, this is fascinating to me, because I get clients who come in to me and they'll say, okay, aren't you here to fix me? And I'm like, no, I'm here to help you learn how to have coping mechanisms, because life is hard and
Yeah,
I can't fix that.
right. Yeah, I I just actually saw Into the Woods at Kensington Theater, and it was really funny. The lady we're introducing it to everyone. She's like, "Don't leave after the first act, please." Which I would never do. But yeah, I saw Sweeney Todd at West Valley uh, Center, and they did an absolutely amazing
So good
job.
job.
It
Oh, West
was
Valley is so good.
so underrated. It's
I
so
know.
it's
People
so
listening to
good.
this, if you live in Utah, go see shows at the West Valley Arts Center.
They're just yeah, and they just did everything, the staging, the singing. It was I just don't know how you could even do it better, to be honest. It
Yeah.
was unbelievable. It was so good.
Besides, like,
And
honestly, I saw an off-Broadway production of Todd that was really creepy good,
mhm.
and they served meat pies. It
Oh
was
my
creepy.
gosh.
Yeah, but besides that production, and I've seen it at, like, Pioneer Theater, I've seen it a whole bunch of different places, but besides that off-Broadway production, the best production I've ever seen was there at West Valley.
Oh, it was that's good. That because I that's the only time I've seen it, and I was blown away. And then I also finally saw Chicago in my last Broadway trip. I had never seen it, but I had it was playing on Monday, and I had a Monday, so I decided to go for it. And it's I can understand why it's had such a run, because
Mhm.
it's super simple. It's just like musicians and the actors. There's not like fancy sets, or it's very very simple, but it works because it's catchy songs and a fun and fun enough story. But yeah, so that was fun. So I finally checked that off my list of shows. And they're also going to be having like the sort of 70s shows, which aren't like as dark, but I think they're probably going to have, I mean, we know they're going to have Hair. We know they're going to but they'll probably have Jesus Christ Superstar, some of these other shows.
They're
That are more.
they're representing Pippin too, which is a very
Mm,
like obscure. I was reading a little bit about it, and I actually really love Pippin, but yeah, not a lot of people do.
I've never seen it, but I would love to. But there we go. So we're really excited about the new season, and thank you to both of you so much for doing this and for being here on this recap of season 1. If you're listening, let us know what you think of season 1. What were your favorite songs? What you think of the parody? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section, or on on Twitter, or wherever you follow us on social media. Adam, do you have any social media you want to share?
I'm on just the kind of the main ones. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and they can just find me with AQ Cannon, either of those.
Okay. Great. And we're all members of Utah Theater Lovers. That's where I posted about doing this podcast. So even if you're not in Utah, you can join Utah Theater Lovers because it's just a super fun community and group that is very well run and has amazing meetups and trips and stuff like that. So
yeah, they travel to New York every year, and they've even traveled to, I went with them to London, which was probably my favorite vacation I've ever done in my whole life. So
yeah, it was an incredible trip last year going to, I'd always wanted to go, but it's just expensive. So I had never done it, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. So check out Utah Theater Lovers. Yeah. They do a great job. And let us know what you think. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. So if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. We'd really appreciate it. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have the Patreon group, which is fun, and the merch stores. Check that out. And thanks to both of you so much. And we'll be excited to go on this journey to Chicago. Here we go.
I should have said, Rachel, I guess, check out Utah Theater Bloggers for reviews of all theater throughout all the state of Utah.
Yes. It's an awesome site. So, all right. Bye, everyone.